So every time Parker comes up, you're just like, I don't want to deal with it.
I'll explain that to you off camera, but that's just not happening.
Every time Parker's name came up, a shadow fell across his face. He didn't want to deal with it. Not here, not now. Off camera, the story was different, but out in the open, Parker kept his silence. The cameras, the microphones, the endless chatter of the northern forums, none of it mattered. Today, though, the air was different. Today, Tony Beets was out, and the golden opportunity he had long waited for was breathing just within reach. The camp stirred like a storm on the horizon. Engines coughed to life, shovels bit into the frozen earth, and dust rose in golden plumes under the weak northern sun. Parker didn't hesitate. A single hand signal sent his crew into motion. Men and machines moved as one, a well-oiled orchestra of chaos. Metal clanged, shouts echoed, and the smell of diesel mingled with the sharp, icy air. It was a scene of urgency, of purpose, a statement in motion. The field was open, and Parker intended to claim it. For years, Tony had been the king of the Yukon. His name carried weight, fear, and respect. But this morning, his empire was brittle, exposed. Tony's sudden absence left a fortune buried in untouched earth. Nobody knew the exact measure, but everyone understood the implication. Parker's crew tore into the claim with surgical precision, shoveling rich, untapped ore into groaning trucks. Each load glittered with promise, the golden particles catching the sunlight as though celebrating their liberation. Side-on spectators whispered, wide-eyed, some skeptical, some in awe. This could be Parker's boldest move yet. The rhythm of the camp was hypnotic, hammers striking metal, engines roaring, dust swirling. Every man, every shovel, every machine had a role. Parker didn't just move fast, he moved smart. His eyes swept over the land, calculating every rise, every hollow, every access point that might complicate the claim. Tony's absence wasn't just a gap, it was an invitation, a challenge left unspoken but clearly understood. Parker wasn't wasting a second. By late morning, the scale of Parker's operation became visible. Trucks creaked under the weight of freshly unearthed ore. Shovels disappeared into deep layers of frozen earth, and the camp buzzed with a fevered energy that hadn't been seen in these parts for decades. Locals watched from ridgelines, binoculars in hand, trying to discern what Parker had planned and how he executed it so swiftly. The story of Tony's absent claim was spreading fast, and everywhere eyes turned toward the new king in motion. Parker's men didn't waste their momentum. Every trench, every scoop, every truckload followed a meticulous rhythm. They knew exactly what to target, where the richest deposits lay. Parker's instincts, honed through years of patient observation and careful scheming, guided the team like an unseen conductor. He moved in calculated bursts, choosing precision over flamboyance. Every man on site understood his cue. When Parker smiled, just a slow, measured curve of the lips, everything shifted. They didn't need words. They understood the mission and the stakes. Gold, untouched and glimmering, slipped through the frozen layers. For Parker, it wasn't just a resource, it was a statement. While Tony's claim had once been a fortress of labor, Parker's operation felt like an avalanche, unstoppable and thorough. Within hours, the trucks, filled with the glinting ore, began their journey to processing. Every grain, every fleck of gold was proof of opportunity seized at the perfect moment. Insiders whispered that Tony had underestimated the speed at which Parker could strike. Years of waiting had sharpened Parker's patience, his ability to read the landscape and the politics surrounding it. He didn't just arrive, he dominated. The golden field, which had seemed unreachable just yesterday, was now a playground for Parker's strategy, his intellect, and his unrelenting ambition. Trouble, however, had not waited for dawn, it had begun before. Tony's foreman walked into the pit and froze. The massive dredge, a metal behemoth that had chewed through frozen earth for years, stood still. Red government seals flapped in the cold wind, fluttering like ominous warning flags across the machinery. Engines dead. Pumps silent. Hoses cut. Fuel drained. The shutdown wasn't temporary. It was a final, decisive strike. Within hours, word spread across the valley. Miners from neighboring camps climbed ridges, pointing and whispering. Some said illegal expansion trenches were the cause. Others claimed politics, not law, was at work. One story went further, suggesting Tony had brushed off warnings with his usual growl, "You don't tell me where to dig." The dredge that once roared day and night now sat frozen in silence. Steam still rose from stacks, but it was ghostly, powerless. Crews huddled around bonfires, faces lit by flames, murmuring among themselves. Tony himself was nowhere to be seen. Across Dawson, in a small trailer warmed by old radiators, another miner stared at the breaking headline, "Beets operation suspended indefinitely." Parker leaned forward, eyes fixed, expression unreadable. His crew waited, sensing the shift in the tides. After a long pause, Parker smiled. No words were spoken, but the meaning was clear: opportunity had arrived. The reasons for Tony's downfall were multiple. Official reports cited hydraulic overreach and missed reclamation orders. Leaked memos told a subtler story: secret complaints about noise, water flow disruption, and heritage site concerns. Possibly, a rival miner had tipped the authorities. Tony, undeterred, confronted reporters outside his claim, snow whipping through his beard. "They pick me because I don't kiss their boots," he shouted. The video went viral, splitting the internet, half hailed him as a legend, half deemed him reckless. Machines remained frozen under frost. The claim that had once symbolized unstoppable northern dominance now felt fragile, exposed. And while the world debated Tony's fate online, Parker observed silently, calculating his next move. As the story spread, forums lit up with speculation. Bars in Dawson were filled with miners arguing over pints of beer. Some saw Tony as a rebel, a living symbol of defiance. Others claimed he had finally gone too far. YouTube channels dissected every angle. Podcasts debated legality, strategy, and the human drama of the frozen claim. Meanwhile, Parker's calm demeanor contrasted sharply with the chaos. While the internet exploded with opinions, Parker sat alone in his dimly lit office. Maps sprawled across his desk like battle plans. Satellite imagery glowed on his laptop, displaying creeks, drainage, lease lines, and access routes. At the center, one red outline burned brighter than the rest: Beets Creek. The crown Tony once wore hung loose, waiting for someone bold enough to claim it. Parker didn't shout, he didn't rant. He simply prepared. Midnight came, and Parker called his top foreman into a small, heated room. The air was tight with anticipation. "If Tony's out," Parker said calmly, "that ground's up for grabs. Someone's going to keep it running. Why not us?" No one spoke immediately. Parker spread a new map marked with fuel routes, wash plant logistics, and excavation lines. Every step had been planned in advance. Numbers were run. Scenarios tested. All signs pointed to feasibility: they could move fast. By 3 a.m., scouts were already heading north in unmarked trucks. Their cover, an environmental survey. Their real mission, mapping Beets Creek and noting unguarded access points. Every precaution, every measure, had been taken. Parker had not waited for opportunity, he had anticipated it, meticulously. As dawn broke over Dawson, Parker's crew rolled into position. Bright yellow machines cut through the snow. Trucks moved in formation, engines roaring. The sight hit Tony's frozen crew like a physical blow. They hadn't expected this speed, this precision. Within hours, Parker's lawyers had filed new paperwork under a fresh company name, Klondike North Ventures. On paper, it was a separate entity. In truth, it was Parker's shield and spear, allowing him to walk through doors Tony could not. Excavators tore into the ground mere miles from Tony's frozen claim. Dust rose, engines hummed, and the golden field seemed to shift ownership under the weight of Parker's strategy. Every maneuver had been pre-calculated: trucks, wash plants, fuel supplies, manpower. By the second night, the valley was alive. Lights, machines, and personnel worked in unison, a stark contrast to the still, frozen empire Tony had left behind. Parker did not stop at the claim. Surrounding small leases, previously overlooked, were acquired. Simple roads, drainage channels, side lots, all became choke points. By owning them, Parker boxed Tony in without ever breaking boundaries. Expansion, once a possibility for Tony, was now impossible. The valley lights cut through the darkness, illuminating Parker's machinery as it moved efficiently, relentlessly, like a predator asserting dominance over territory. Power lines snaked across frozen ridges, portable generators hummed, and bulldozers widened narrow trails. A mobile command trailer, glowing with monitors and radios, directed the operation. Every voice crackled with confidence, every step executed with precision. Within 72 hours, Parker's activity replaced Tony's silence. The valley now belonged to a new king. Tony, undeterred, began plotting his own response. Maps covered tables in his trailer. Fingers traced old, abandoned gulches, areas previously prospected and forgotten. "Nobody's watching that spot," he murmured. "No cameras, no inspectors. Small scale, no paper trail." He wasn't appealing or protesting. He was preparing a guerrilla-style return. His crew listened, silent, understanding the stakes. Tony's calm voice, edged with steel, left no doubt: if Parker wanted a fight, he would get one. The frozen valley would not remain quiet for long. Tony's legacy demanded action. By the end of the week, Parker's lights cut through the snow like daybreak. Engines hummed, or trucks moved steadily, and golden dust filled the air. Tony's machines remained frozen under frost. From ridge tops, observers could see two worlds side by side: Parker's empire alive, Tony's once great claim silent and powerless. Monica Beet, binoculars pressed to her face, whispered under her breath, "He didn't waste a damn second." Across the valley, Tony traced his finger along maps, plotting a secret resurgence. The empire had shifted, yes, but the war was far from over. The Yukon, cold and unyielding, bore witness to two forces in conflict. One patient, strategic, and unstoppable. The other furious, experienced, and unpredictable. And somewhere beneath the frost, golden promises waited for the next bold strike. Parker's scouts had already begun probing hidden gullies and smaller tributaries. Their trucks were silent, creeping over frost-hardened paths. Every creek, every ridgeline, every abandoned sluice point was mapped and photographed. By nightfall, Parker had a mental blueprint of the entire valley, where gold might remain untapped and where Tony could possibly retaliate. Inside Parker's command trailer, monitors flickered with satellite overlays and drone feeds. His top foreman pointed out a faint track leading behind a ridge, one that Tony's team might try to use for a covert return. Parker's eyes narrowed. "Seal it. All of it. If he moves into our trap." Outside, the camp hummed with quiet intensity. Crews prepped secondary machinery, stacked fuel drums, and dug trenches in anticipation of a counterstrike. Every movement was precise, rehearsed, a ballet of controlled chaos. Meanwhile, the frozen valley seemed to shiver under the tension. Snow, wind, and frost were witnesses to a silent battle. Parker knew that one misstep could turn advantage into vulnerability. But patience had always been his weapon, and tonight, it shone brighter than the northern lights above. Across the valley, Tony paced the interior of his trailer. The maps spread across his table were old, worn, annotated with decades of experience. He fingered a narrow gulch previously prospected and abandoned years ago, muttering to himself. "No cameras, no paper trail, nobody's watching this spot." He summoned his oldest crew members, men who had dug beside him for years. "We go small scale. Fast. Hidden. They think they own the valley. They haven't seen what persistence can do." Their eyes, cold yet determined, reflected years of frozen winters, unyielding labor, and survival in the harsh Yukon landscape. Equipment was packed into unmarked sleds, pumps were loaded onto small snow trucks, and a low-profile operation began to take shape. Tony wasn't panicking. He was calculating. Every clandestine route, every frozen creek path, every abandoned shaft was an opportunity. And while Parker celebrated his victory, Tony quietly prepared to remind the Yukon that legends don't die, they adapt. It happened just after dawn. A lone scout from Parker's crew spotted movement on the ridge, faint tracks in fresh snow, equipment shadows moving under a tree line. Parker was immediately alerted. Possible infiltrators, he said. Radios crackled as squads were dispatched to intercept. Within hours, the first clash of strategy became visible. Parker's men secured choke points. Tony's team, small and fast, used hidden gullies to bypass the main road. Snow crunched under boots and tracks, a subtle symphony of tension. Neither side fired, but the air carried the anticipation of conflict. Parker's eyes never left the screens. Drone cameras captured every movement. Trucks rolled quietly, waiting for the signal. The valley, a frozen chessboard, stretched beneath them. Every decision counted. Every move, every misstep, could shift the balance. Tony's team, nimble and experienced, melted back into cover, leaving only traces in the snow. Yet Parker's preparations were meticulous. He had anticipated this. The first clash ended silently, but the message was clear: neither side was yielding. The war had entered a new phase. Days passed. Parker's claim grew richer and more organized. The trucks moved with precision. Wash plants churned, separating gold from earth. Each day's haul glittered in the weak northern sun, testament to Parker's planning. But the tension in the valley escalated. Tony's clandestine operations, though small, began to unsettle supply routes. Parker's scouts reported sudden blockages, equipment tampered with, and minor sabotage attempts. Inside the command trailer, Parker leaned over maps, tracing potential vulnerabilities. "We expected this," he murmured. "Adapt and contain. Keep our operations insulated." Crews doubled checks on machinery, supply lines, and backup routes. Every road was monitored. Every creek observed. Tony, meanwhile, had discovered one of Parker's minor supply chains. A small convoy of trucks carrying high-grade ore was stalled in the snow overnight. Tony's eyes gleamed. "Let's see if they notice," he whispered, a faint smile curling his lips. The battle had shifted from brute extraction to cunning strategy. The Golden Valley was no longer just a prize, it was a battlefield of wits, patience, and timing. Parker received an unexpected message one evening. A former associate of Tony's, long estranged from his old crew, had offered information in exchange for a small lease in Parker's growing empire. "He knows the hidden paths, the backup caches, and weaknesses," Parker's foreman said. Parker weighed the risk. Trust was rare in the Yukon, yet the intelligence could save weeks of time. By morning, the former associate arrived, escorted quietly to Parker's command post. Over maps and drones, he traced Tony's probable routes, unmonitored shafts, and forgotten access points. Parker listened, absorbing every detail. The ally was cautious but detailed. Every insight allowed Parker to preempt Tony's movements, reinforcing choke points and logistics. In the cold, bright snow, Parker's strategy began to feel unstoppable. He didn't celebrate yet. In the Yukon, the gold was always beneath the frost, waiting for the next bold move. And every bold move carried risk. Weeks into the operation, Parker planned a decisive strike. A new excavation site, closer to Tony's frozen claim, was selected. Trucks, cranes, and drills were repositioned under the cover of darkness. Crews moved in silence, aware that any misstep could alert Tony. Parker coordinated from the mobile command trailer, his eyes scanning satellite feeds, drone footage, and supply routes simultaneously. The strike was meticulous. Heavy machinery dug into untouched soil, uncovering streaks of gold richer than any previously extracted. The operation moved fast, with engineers, drillers, and haulers working like a well-rehearsed symphony. Every scoop of earth carried a message. Parker was not just taking land, he was securing dominance. Tony's crew, meanwhile, observed from concealed ridges. They had underestimated the speed and precision of Parker's move. By the time they could react, the golden veins were already being transported to Parker's central processing area. The gamble had paid off. Parker's empire now gleamed like the morning sun over the frozen valley, a mix of strategy, timing, and patience realized. Tony knew he couldn't match Parker head-on. Instead, he relied on stealth. A convoy of snow trucks, engines muffled under tarps, moved silently along hidden ridges. Men carried portable pumps, shovels, and small-scale excavation equipment. They aimed for a back channel, one Parker hadn't secured completely. By dawn, they reached the site. A narrow gulch offered natural concealment, snow draped over machinery like a winter cloak. Tony surveyed the terrain, every ridge, every shadow memorized. "We take what we can, then vanish," he instructed. The team began to dig, uncovering pockets of high-grade ore unnoticed by Parker's scouts. Elsewhere, Parker's drones scanned the valley, their infrared feeds revealing faint heat signatures. The command trailer buzzed with alerts. Parker leaned in, eyes narrowing. Possible infiltrators. Track and intercept, silent approach. No alarms. Within minutes, squads mobilized, converging on Tony's hidden operation. The quiet strike had turned into a high-stakes game of cat and mouse. Parker's drones hovered over frost-covered ridges, transmitting live feeds back to the command trailer. Every shadow, every glint of metal, every subtle movement was analyzed. The valley below looked peaceful, white and pristine, but Parker knew better. Heat signatures indicated multiple points of activity. 2 clusters, his foreman reported. One near the gulch, one moving along the southern creek. Parker's lips tightened. The operation required precision, intercept too early, and Tony would escape with valuable or wait too long, and they could lose equipment or personnel. Across the valley, Tony's team sensed the invisible eyes upon them. They froze, listened to the wind, adjusted their positions. Every decision mattered. For hours, the game continued, Parker calculating intercepts, Tony adjusting movements, the valley itself holding its breath. Tension was tangible, like frost clinging to skin. Parker's solution was both simple and ruthless. Mobile squads, lightly armored, moved along concealed access routes, cutting off Tony's escape. Meanwhile, heavy machinery prepared for rapid extraction of ore, preloaded for immediate transport. Parker coordinated via radio, each team synchronized to the minute. By midday, Tony realized he was trapped in a corridor of Parker's design. A narrow gulch that had seemed perfect for stealth now became a cage. Parker's men, silent but unyielding, moved to flank both sides. The snow crunch under boots and tracks echoed faintly through the valley, signaling the inevitability of confrontation. Tony, ever resourceful, paused to adjust. "We adapt," he muttered, redirecting pumps and digging toward an unmonitored ridge. But Parker anticipated it. 2 scouts had already taken positions to intercept, cutting off the alternative exit. The Golden Game had become a strategic battle, wits against wits, each decision magnified by the unforgiving northern landscape. By late afternoon, Parker's strategy bore fruit. One of Tony's ore caches, dug in haste and hidden under snow, was discovered by a squad of Parker's men. Crates of high-grade gold dust shimmered under the weak sunlight. The news was radioed back to the command trailer, and Parker allowed himself a rare smile. The capture sent a shockwave through Tony's team. They retreated silently, abandoning several small caches to avoid confrontation. The psychological blow was significant. Parker's patience and planning had turned the tide. Every scoop of ore, every seized cache, reinforced his dominance. Parker didn't pause after his first capture. From the command trailer, he surveyed the valley like a general on a ridge. New plots of land, small and seemingly insignificant, were acquired almost overnight. Side creeks, hidden gullies, and abandoned sluices, every inch was brought under Parker's control. Each new acquisition wasn't just about ore, it was a tactical move. By controlling these minor plots, Parker effectively boxed Tony in, cutting off potential escape routes and alternative extraction sites. Trucks rolled through widened access roads, bulldozers cleared snow-covered paths, and portable generators powered the growing network of machinery. The valley, once neutral ground, now bore Parker's signature: order, speed, and precision. From high above, drone cameras captured the transformation, light illuminating the valley floor, engines moving in a synchronized rhythm, dust rising from excavation sites like golden smoke. Parker had turned the terrain itself into an ally. Meanwhile, Tony's team was forced to retreat further into isolated ridges. The golden caches they had hoped to secure were now surrounded, monitored, and impossible to move without alerting Parker's network. Every step Tony tried to take was anticipated, every move countered, every advantage neutralized. Parker's empire was growing, and Tony was being forced into shadows. Tony refused to surrender quietly. Under the cover of darkness, small teams crept along hidden ridges and gullies, attempting to sabotage Parker's supply lines. Snow trucks moved silently, pumps were tampered with, and frozen paths were booby-trapped to delay extraction. Parker's surveillance network, however, was relentless. Drones patrolled every possible route, infrared and thermal feeds revealing subtle heat signatures. Radios crackled with updates as Parker's night squads intercepted Tony's covert teams before significant damage could occur. The clash wasn't loud, but it was psychologically intense. Every sabotage attempt met a preemptive counter. Crews, trained for precision and speed, neutralized threats with minimal disruption to the extraction process. Parker's empire, alive under floodlights, contrasted sharply with Tony's hidden and desperate maneuvers. The valley had become a silent battlefield, snow and frost bearing witness to a high-stakes, unseen war. As days turned into a week, Tony knew time was slipping. His last gambit involved a risky, high-stakes operation. Selecting a ridge untouched by Parker's scouts, he deployed his most experienced miners for a nighttime extraction. The plan was to haul out high-grade ore undetected and disrupt Parker's supply chain. The operation was tense. Snow crunched under boots, equipment rattled softly, and the northern wind carried every sound across the valley. Parker, monitoring feeds in the command trailer, noticed anomalies in thermal patterns. He didn't panic, he smiled slightly, recognizing the trap before it could be sprung. Within minutes, Parker's squads were in position. Tony's miners reached the extraction point, only to find themselves enclosed on all sides. The hidden ridge, once a secret, was now part of Parker's network. Trapped and forced to retreat, Tony's gambit failed. The golden ore they risked so much for remained under Parker's control, and the psychological toll on Tony's crew was heavy. The valley was quiet again, but Parker's dominance had solidified. Every minor cache, every ridge, and every creek now fell under his purview. Tony's last gamble had only highlighted the efficiency of Parker's strategy. With Tony's movements contained, Parker turned his attention to logistics and consolidation. Trucks and machinery were optimized for maximum output, or transported efficiently to processing areas, and every supply line fortified against future incursions. Crews worked day and night. The valley glimmered under floodlights as engines roared, and golden dust floated in the air. Parker's command trailer became the nerve center, a hub of satellite feeds, maps, and coordination. Every step of extraction, transport, and security was monitored in real time. Meanwhile, Parker continued to expand influence over adjacent miner leases. Roads were cleared, creeks monitored, and additional resources deployed. The empire wasn't just growing, it was becoming impregnable. Tony's empire, frozen and fractured, had no room to expand, no routes for retreat, and no leverage. Parker had created a golden fortress in the northern Yukon. Parker didn't just win physically, he began winning psychologically. His drones, cameras, and controlled leaks ensured Tony's team knew their every move was tracked. Rumors of Parker's efficiency spread among miners across the region. Every failed incursion, every lost cache, every blocked ridge reinforced the narrative: Parker was untouchable. Tony's team, once confident in hidden ridges and secret routes, became cautious, hesitant, fearful of exposure. Parker's intelligence network had turned the valley into a stage, where every snowflake, every glint of machinery, told a story of inevitable dominance. Even Parker's crew felt the psychological edge. Confidence and precision replaced fatigue and doubt. Every scoop of ore, every truckload of gold, became a symbol of calculated patience turned into victory. The Yukon was no longer just a landscape of frozen rivers and mountains, it was Parker's kingdom, meticulously mapped, observed, and conquered.